beautiful people out there. How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, the podcast where we talk everything National Football League in season, off season. It doesn't matter because it's football. I'm your host, Double Diesel, and welcome to this super Wildcard weekend review of the 2023 National Football League postseason. Before we get into the show, I'd like to ask, if you have not already, please like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoy this content or know anybody who would enjoy this content. Helps boost my exposure, get us out there to more eyeballs. That would mean the absolute world to me if you would do that. Also, if you have not already, go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod. Also, if you have not already and you would like to, please go support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. On there, we are going to be starting our draft content fairly soon, Patreon-specific draft content such as team-specific mock drafts, as well as certain film room evaluations that we are going to be doing as we get deeper into the offseason. That will be full swing both on Patreon and here on YouTube once we get into the offseason following the Super Bowl. That's still a bit of ways away, but I'm very excited to start doing that soon here on the channel. So if you have not done any of those things and you'd like to, the links to those will be in the description down below. But let's get on with the show. Super Wildcard Weekend is officially in the books, and what a fun weekend it was. For those of you who actually stopped by to follow some of the streams, I was streaming all day Sunday to watch a good chunk of the games there. A lot of fun games, a lot of fun things to talk about, both for the teams moving forward in the tournament, as well as teams that are their off seasons have officially begun. And I'm going to talk about each of these games and the storylines as far as these specific teams in these games, both for the teams moving forward and the teams whose season have ended. We're going to start in chronological order, which means we are going to start with the Seattle Seahawks taking on the San Francisco 49ers. A game that was fun for a bit. For the most part, went as pretty much as I expected. I think the Seattle Seahawks were just, let's be honest, I think the Seahawks organization as well as Seahawks fans were just happy to merely be in the playoffs. It was a game for the most part. It was in the first half, this was a competitive game back and forth. Both offenses struggled at times, but for the most part, were able to move the ball rather effectively. The Seattle Seahawks actually took a 17-16 lead going into halftime. This looked like it was going to be a close game, though. And then the second half began. And that's when everything fell to shit for the Seattle Seahawks. Their season abruptly came to an end, losing 41 to 23, I believe the final score was. So, game went relatively as I expected. More specifically, the second half went as I expected. I don't know anybody. In the case of the 49ers, I do not know anybody that can stop this Niners team at the moment. They are so loaded with talent, it's not even funny. This is a team that has arguably the best overall offensive weapon in football in Christian McCaffrey, who is the definition of do-it-all. And then they have arguably the second greatest offensive weapon in the NFL in Deebo Samuel, who is basically the same as Christian McCaffrey, can do everything you ask of them. Both of them are great out of the backfield, great as receivers, great as blockers. Anything you can ask them to do offensively, you can have them on design passing plays if you want them to. Anything you ask of them to do, they are going to do it, and they are going to do it exceptionally well. Not to mention that you still have one of the best tight ends in the NFL in George Kittle. He's kind of teetered off in the best tight end in the NFL category over the past couple of years, but the latter half of the season and on Saturday, that's when the game was on Saturday, basically reminded everyone that, yes, I am a top 2 to top 3 tight end in this league. And when he gets rolling, he is a beast. When all these guys get rolling in they're beasts. I haven't mentioned the likes of Brandon Ayuk yet. Juwan Jennings is an underrated piece in this offense. Solid offensive line. Monster of a defense. This defense is still as much of a shit-wrecking unit as you can Nick Bosa has been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate all year. They have been this. I don't know, and this is as complete of a team that I have seen. And the one guy that I've yet to talk about is the leader of it all, and is the biggest shock of it all, and that is Brock Purdy, the most relevant Mr. Irrelevant we've ever seen. The story just gets greater and greater as it goes. He is, because here's the thing. We've seen these kind of like underdog stories before when it comes to the quarterback position. The most famous ones being Tom Brady, pick 199 in the 6th round. Kurt Warner, undrafted, was bagging groceries for a couple of years before he finally got his shot on an NFL roster, and then eventually became the starter there due to injury. But both those guys have incredible stories of guys that no one thought any of them, and then they rose to the occasion and eventually became Hall of Famers. Now, I'm not saying Brock Purdy's going to become a Hall of Famer, but this is the beginning of something similar to those stories. The last pick in the NFL draft out of, Iowa State. A guy that he was, again, Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of the draft. It's a title that before this, the most successful Mr. Irrelevant was Ryan Suckup, a kicker. So most of these guys fizzle out after training camp, and if they do make the roster, they never make an impact. So it's a title because it's like, hey, it's the last pick of the draft. You know, you were good enough to get drafted, but you're also not good enough to get, like, you know, worth anyone's time. So you have the distinction of being the very last pick in the draft. You're not bad enough to be undrafted, but you're also not good enough to be picked higher than this. And yet here we are heading into the divisional round, and Brock Purdy is undefeated as a starter. Ever since he's took over as the starting quarterback of this team, his first start, ironically, was against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we'll get to them later on in this show. You kind of saw it there where that first half, you remember that first half against Tampa, it was magical. It was magical, and we were all just laughing because, like, this is unbelievable. We get it, this roster is incredibly talented, and it just, but seeing Brock Purdy play in that way was really, really cool to see. And then you figured at some point, all right, but he's still a rookie quarterback. He's still Mr. Irrelevant. At some point, teams are going to figure him out. And then they just kept winning and winning and winning. And Purdy just kept looking better and better and better all the way up to this last weekend where, you know, you can make the argument that saying, like, hey, this is a Niners team that's so talented, any quarterback's going to thrive in it. And you're right. But we can't just sit here and say that Brock Purdy is a product of the system when he himself has to live up to the expectation, because this is a team that's ready to win a Super Bowl now and dominate everyone now. But the quarterback is the most important position on the field, and they still have to do their job. Brock Purdy still has to hold up his end of the bargain, and all he was asked of is just keep the ship afloat. And you watch him play, he has done more than keep the ship afloat. He has made plays. Like, just thinking back to this past game on Saturday, where there was one touchdown that sticks out in my mind that shows that he can be this team's quarterback in the future, potentially even next year, but we'll get into that in just a second, where Brock Purdy, he got the snap, he was under pressure, he rolled to his left, stopped, turned around back to his right, kind of like Mahomes-esque, and kept rolling away from the pressure and fired it to a wide open guy in the flat. But it was the ability to keep that play alive. And there was another play later in that game where he was doing the same thing, running around trying to keep the play alive, fired it into a tight window in the back of the end zone to Brandon Ayuk, and Ayuk dropped it, but it hit him right in the hands. It was a tight throw in a tight window. It was a great play that should have been caught for a touchdown. But it's plays like that where it's like, yeah, he has an amazing supporting cast around him, but I also can't sit here and say that that supporting cast is making him look better than he actually is, because he is making plays himself that is helping this team win games. and is helping this team be the dominant force that they are. You couldn't have said that with Jimmy Garoppolo in there. Trey Lance is still up in the air, and that's really the cog in all this. If this ends up taking the Tom Brady, Kurt Warner ending with Brock Purdy hoisting the Lombardi Trophy in Arizona, is there a debate on who their quarterback, the 49ers starting quarterback, is next year? Because we know Jimmy G is not going to be that. We know Jimmy G is off this roster for sure. If it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he would have been off the roster last year, it definitely should be this year. And Brock Purdy, if he is the one holding the Lombardi, the question at that point is, if you decide to roll with him as your starter going into next year, what do you do with Trey Lance? And that is why I say there's a cog in all of this, of their quarterback situation, why there might be a quarterback controversy going into next year for this team. And Purdy's been playing amazing, but also you've invested so much in Trey Lance. You gave up so much to get Trey Lance, and you don't know what you have in him still. Because remember, he didn't play a whole lot last year. He never started a game last year for the Niners. This year, he was finally given the keys to the car, and he plays like shit in a monsoon against Chicago, where it's pouring rain. Everybody's not playing their greatest because they're playing in a freaking monsoon. And then the second game of the season against the Seattle Seahawks, he breaks his leg on the first drive of the game, and his season's over. So you still have no idea what you might have in Trey Lance. So that's where the idea of what do you do at this position going into 2023. This year, Niners fans, just enjoy the ride, just enjoy it, and hope Brock Purdy can keep batting 1,000 and take you to the promised land. But in 2023, that is a serious debate that you're going to have, and that the Niners organization is going to have of, what do you do? Do we keep both guys? Do we start Trey and make Brock the backup? Do we start Brock and make Trey the backup? Do we trade Trey? What do we trade Brock? Like, what do we do here? So it's a question that is going to have to be posed at some point, because I think in the offseason it is going to be a legitimate quarterback controversy if you choose to keep both guys on the roster, which I do think they will. But that's in the case of the Niners. In the case of the Seattle Seahawks, what a season, really. That's all you have to say. In my eyes, even though they went one and done, I still think this season was a success for the Seattle Seahawks. They made the postseason when no one thought they would. Everyone, including myself, thought they were going to be in the Bryce Young sweepstakes. And they shocked everyone by making the postseason. Geno Smith was a Pro Bowler, played out of his mind, broke the Seahawks' single-season passing record set by the man they traded in the offseason, got a king's ransom from the Broncos in the Russell Wilson trade, including a first-round pick this year. That's a top 5 pick because the Broncos completely turned to shit. So everyone thought the Seahawks were going to be tanking to try and get a top 5 pick or get the first overall pick. They got a top 5 pick anyway, and it wasn't even their own. Denver did the tanking for them, and Seattle turned into a really good team and made the postseason. This was the best case scenario for the Seattle Seahawks, and it just solidified just how great of a coach Pete Carroll is. It solidified just how really good of a roster this is. Their defense still has a lot of work to do, but they have a top 5 pick that's going to help them take care of that. And I think they found their quarterback for next year. Yes, Geno Smith didn't play as great later in the season as he did in the first half, but he still played really well to the point where they were still in a lot of these games. And I think this contract that Geno's going to get in the offseason is going to be super fascinating. And I think if he hasn't earned a starting job with the Seahawks, which I think would be stupid not to for the Seattle Seahawks, to not bring Geno back for next year, I think he's at the very least earned himself a starting job and a contract for another team. But it'd be stupid for the Seahawks to just let him walk in free agency. But it's going to be very fascinating. And I think the Geno Smith story was just so fun to watch all year. A guy that he was terrible when he was drafted by the New York Jets in the second round. He had 2 years as a starter with the Jets, played terribly, but then again, it's the New York Jets, so how much can you really blame him in that regard? And then he bounced around from team to team as a backup, as a career backup, finally gets a starting job here in Seattle and made the most of it, and now he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. And anyone who would have thought that at the start of the year would have laughed in your face if you told them that. So this was as successful of a season for the Seahawks as you possibly could have imagined. Now it's a question of can you capitalize on this? Can you make sure that this year with Geno was not just a fluke, and is this sustainable? And that's also a question you have to ask. And that's why I think the contract's going to be so fascinating is what is this contract going to look like? And is it going to be designed in a way where it's like, all right, we want to make sure that this year wasn't a fluke, that this wasn't just a one-off year, and Geno Smith's going to get the Ryan Fitzpatrick treatment that Ryan Fitzpatrick gave to the New York Jets, where he had one really good year, and the Jets gave him a contract, and then he just resorted back to the bad Ryan Fitzpatrick immediately after. That is a question that you have to ask with Geno, but it's going to be really fascinating, and I think at the very least the Seattle Seahawks have delayed the idea of getting a quarterback. Even then, if you want to draft a quarterback this year in like the second round or whatever, or in the later rounds of this draft, you still could. You still could draft a quarterback if you wanted to. So, hell, and they're going to have 2 first-round picks this year. You could still get a quarterback maybe in the late first round, maybe like an Anthony Richardson, a guy like a developmental guy that you can sit behind Geno, let him develop, and then see what you still have in Geno. So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do right now, but to me, it's all positives right now for the Seattle Seahawks, and it didn't look like that at the start of this season, and it's ended with nothing but positive. So this is going to be a really fascinating offseason for the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm excited how it goes. Next game was the game of the weekend, for sure, in my eyes. That was the Los Angeles Chargers against the Jacksonville Jaguars, a game where the Los Angeles Chargers were up 27-0 at one point, and it looked like it was going to be a Charger rout. Justin Herbert was playing well. The defense was playing out of his mind. Trevor Lawrence was on pace to break a horrible record. He had, 5 turnovers in the first half, 4 of them picks, I think 1 fumble. And then the Jags just looked overmatched, overpowered, and the Chargers just going to run through it, and onto the divisional round they go. Or so it seemed, because in that second half, the Jaguars never got off their game plan. They just started chipping away at the lead slowly. All of a sudden, going into the fourth quarter, the top of the fourth quarter, the Chargers were only up 30-20. It was only a 10-point game at the start of the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, we have a little something here. And then the Chargers drive down the field, kill a lot of clock, send out Cameron Dicker to extend it to a 13-point lead, and he kicks the ball. It's going straight for a second, and then at the very last second, curves out. No good. Jags take over downtown. And that's when we see the future greatness of Trevor Lawrence really come through. He drives the Jags down the field, eventually, under 5 minutes left, fires a ball into the corner of the end zone to Christian Kirk, the very man that everyone was laughing at Trent Baalke and the Jags for giving this huge contract to, and everyone's saying, like, Christian Kirk does not deserve that money. He doesn't deserve $20 million a year. And yet, here we are in the postseason, scoring a touchdown, playing out of his mind, scoring a touchdown to bring them within 4. I say bring him within 4 because the Jags opt to go for 2 in this situation instead of kicking the extra point and having a field goal tie. They want it in a situation where a field goal could win them the game. So they go out, they have a play designed, but Trevor Lawrence saw something and he said, you know what? Fine. He had a Thanos moment where he said, fine, I'll do it myself. Takes the snap. And I guarantee you, he was the only one, including his center, that thought he was gonna including his center that thought he was gonna do this. No one else in the field thought he was gonna do this because they were like a yard out, a solid yard out. Takes the snap and just runs past the center, dives over, uses all of his 6'6" frame, puts the ball over the goal line. 2-point try is good. It's a 2-point game, and all of a sudden the Jags have all of the momentum. They force a 3 and out, and here we are, the Jags. And then here's the thing. Before I explain a key play on this final drive, I want to say something about Doug Peterson. I laughed when the Jags hired Doug Peterson. I thought, and I know this is going to sound terrible in hindsight, but I felt like they should have hired Byron Leftwich. And at the time, I was like, Byron Leftwich is a more capable head coaching candidate at this point in time than Doug Peterson was, because I was so hell-bent on the ending in Philadelphia for Doug Peterson and how terribly his reign in Philadelphia ended and how sour it ended. So when they hired Doug Peterson, I kind of laughed at it. I was like, no, I mean, it's an upgrade. Anything's going to be an upgrade from Urban Meyer, but still, though. But one thing you can never take away from Doug Peterson, regardless of how bad it gets, regardless of whatever the situation going on with his teams are, you can never deny the fact that he has balls of steel. He will pull out plays that you never thought about pulling out. And this play on this final drive perfectly encapsulated his ideology as a head coach. 4th and inches. Jags line up in a heavy set. Trevor Lawrence under center. He has 3 running backs behind him. Everyone on the planet is thinking quarterback sneak, because that's the way of the league now. 4th and inches on a situation like this, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a quarterback sneak. Everyone, including Doug Peterson. So they line up. Trevor Lawrence under center, 3 running backs behind him. You think he's going to take the snap, and the 3 guys are going to help him push forward to pick up that first down. Instead, they do a snap, a sweep to Travis Etienne with the 2 guys in front of him as lead blockers. They take the handoff. He gets the outside corner, not only picks up the first down, but goes down the sideline, inside the 20, inside the 15-yard line, tackled inbounds to keep the clock running, run one more play, and now they're set up perfectly for a field goal try. I fucking love this. And it's balls of steel. It's something that you're not expecting. It was a perfect play call in that situation where everyone was expecting one thing. You come back with something different, and it worked to perfection, and it kept the clock running, and it set up an easier field goal try. And for Riley Patterson, with a field goal to win the game, and that's what that play was. This is a play not just be conservative and try to pick up the first down and be safe. This was a play to win the game, and that's what it did. Set it up inside the 15, send out Riley Patterson, 3 seconds left, kicks it, walk-off field goal victory. Jaguars pull off the 3rd largest comeback in postseason history. Now, I want to talk about the Jaguars for a second, because they are on their way to play the Kansas City Chiefs next week. And I've been saying since the playoffs started, and I've been told to my face that I'm crazy for this, but I've been saying, and I get this strong feeling, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be what the Cincinnati Bengals were last year. A team that no one expected to make a run. It's like, all right, it's nice they got a playoff win, but probably going to not make it past the second round, definitely not past the conference title game. And yet they made a run all the way to the Super Bowl, the Bengals did. I feel like the Jaguars are the Bengals of last year. it just feels like that with this team where they are incredibly well coached. They have the quarterback. They have the talent, that underrated talent that's much better than people give them credit for. A defense that's better than much people give them credit for. It's not the greatest defense of the world, but they make plays when they need to. They make stops when they need to. They get turnovers when they need to. And they're an offense that they make plays when they need to. And they have explosive players that you don't expect to be as explosive as they are, but they have good players in Christian Kirk, in Zay Jones, in Evan Engram, who's had a career resurgence here. Travis Etienne is a really good running back, and, of course, football Jesus himself and Trevor Lawrence. This has all the potential of a team that can absolutely pull off a couple more upsets, and they play Kansas City this week. Who's to say that the Jacksonville Jaguars cannot have the ability to pull off an upset in Arrowhead? You can't say that. You can't say that it's not a possibility. So it's a really fun team. I hope the Cinderella story continues because it's really fun. This Jags team all around is just a really fun team to watch, and they're a really good football team. And yes, they snuck into the playoffs for sure because they're in a weak division, but it doesn't take away the fact that this is still, this is not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of this year. This is a really good football team that absolutely has the ability to pull off an upset or two. So I'm happy that this Jags season is continuing. It's going to be really fun seeing them moving forward and what they can do against Kansas City. Now, as far as the Chargers, Brandon Staley, you should be thanking your lucky stars that you still have a job and Dean Spanos is still an idiot. Because if I was the owner of this team, I'd have fired you on the fucking tarmac. I would not have allowed you on the team flight back to LA after this game, because this game perfectly encapsulates not just Brandon Staley as a head coach, but the LA Charger, or just the Chargers in general, as a franchise. This game perfectly encapsulates the history of the Chargers, really in like a 30-minute span, because this was the Chargers. This is a team that has historically always come up short, has had really talented teams, but has never had it gone their way because of injury, because of kicking mishaps, because of blown leads, because of a multitude of things, because of having the number one offense and the number one defense in the same year, but you missed the playoffs because your special team sucks. They always had the pieces, they always had the talent, but they just can never seem to get over the hump. And it's a running theme with this team since their inception in the AFL, and it's a running theme throughout their age in San Diego, and they've come to LA, and it's not changed whatsoever. It's the same old Chargers. They will find a way to lose out, and they will find the most humiliating way in order to do it. And I don't know what else to say, but it perfectly encapsulates it. A perfect 20 plus point lead. Everyone's thinking you're just going to run through it, go on to the next round, and then you start taking your foot off the gas. The other team starts coming back in it. And then late in the game, you start getting control back a little bit. You have a chance to extend it, and then the moment that has ended so many Charger playoff runs in the past, a missed field goal wide left. How many Chargers fans, how many playoff runs in the past have ended? How many promising seasons where you thought your team could legitimately win it all have ended because of a missed field goal? One too many times. It happened constantly, it felt like, throughout the 2000s. And it came back and struck once again. And that missed field goal started the 10-point rally late in the fourth quarter. And now here they are. They are now back to being, they thought they were once again they thought they were the older brother again of the city of LA, because they were the only of the LA teams to make the playoffs. But no, even then they're still little brother somehow to the Rams, and the Rams were terrible this year. And that's because the Chargers are such a humiliating. It's not just that they lose. It's not that they lose in the postseason. It's they always find the most humiliating ways to do so. And Dean Spanos, fuck selling the team. He should just contract the organization, because I feel like this is an organization that is just broken. I feel like this is an organization that's just not meant to ever win a championship, because how many times can this happen until, at some point, the Chargers organization and Chargers fans are going to start thinking, what the hell is it going to take for this team to finally win? And yeah, I don't know why Brandon Staley is still a head coach of this team. The less said about him, the better. But yeah, man, Charger season comes to an end once again, and they've lost in a lot of heartbreaking ways in the postseason. This might be the most heartbreaking of them all. But that was the action on Saturday. Now we get into the Sunday games. As all you probably know, if you joined me, I was streaming all three of the games that occurred on Sunday, and that started with the Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. This was a close game for the most part, though I would argue it didn't feel like it was a close back and forth game, because I'm just going to talk about the Miami Dolphins. I have never been more frustrated watching a quarterback performance than I was watching Skylar Thompson play on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. I've never been more frustrated, because this was a game where the Dolphins were in it throughout. They had multiple chances to take the lead, to tie the game. They had so many chances throughout this game because their defense kept them in it. Yes, they gave up a few big plays, but they were, for the most part, able to hold the Bills' offense in check as much as you could. And yet, you never felt like the Dolphins had a chance because Skylar Thompson played so much like shit. And it really, and this is the sad thing, had Teddy Bridgewater been the quarterback in this game, I felt like the Dolphins would have won. I definitely felt like the Dolphins would have won had Tua been the quarterback. And that's the sad thing, is that the Dolphins could have easily have won this game. They could have pulled off the upset of the playoffs had they actually had a functional quarterback in the game. And the thing was, you can't even say like, oh, well, they're both injured. Teddy Bridgewater was active for this game. And those of you who were with me on the stream, I was actively chanting, you got to put Teddy in the game. I get it. It's still a close game. I get that. But at some point, this offense isn't doing shit. You got to put Teddy in the game just to try and give the offense a spark, because Skylar Thompson was overwhelmed. He was overmatched. He didn't look like a quarterback in this game at all. So it's all, as far as this game goes for the Dolphins, that's all I have to say on them. But as far as the Dolphins offseason goes, they backed into the playoffs for sure. And really the main storyline for this Dolphins team in the offseason, it's one thing and one thing only, is what's going to happen with Tua. And if he does play quarterback again in the NFL, it will be for the Miami Dolphins for sure. I think he played well enough this year where he has earned that chance. But the key word in that phrase is if he plays quarterback in the NFL again, because he got concussed. This game happened, what was it? The 15th. Sunday the 15th. And Tua got concussed on Christmas Day. 15 days into the new year, he still was not cleared out of concussion protocol. And it was the second concussion of the year. Debatably third. And that to me is concerning. And now this raises the question not of will Tua be this team's quarterback next year, but that is, will Tua have to be forced to retire essentially? Because if you got concussed on Christmas Day and you're still not cleared to play 15 days into the new year, that is a concerning sign that, can your brain hold up in this game, and is it safe for you to play? It's not of can you play, it's a question of is it safe enough for you to play? And I don't feel like at this point, with his third concussion, and it took him this in the year, and it took him this long, and he wasn't cleared, I feel like it's a serious thing where I feel like he's going to have to be forced to retire. And I don't know if it's going to be safe for him to play football anymore. Now, he can still be around in football. He could be on as a coach, an assistant, or whatever, but I don't know if it's safe enough for him to play football. And I'll talk more about it if there's an eventual decision made on what Tua's future is going to look like. Because right now it's only just pure speculation. But if it were up to me, I would sit Tua down and be like, hey, man, I don't think your brain's going to hold up. I don't think your brain's going to hold up. I think it's time to call it quits, or else you're not going to be healthy later on in life. Because that's the thing here. Tua the person is more important right now than Tua the quarterback. Tua, we got to focus on how is this going to, if we continue to let him play, how is this going to affect him in the future? Like when he is officially retired and he's in his 30s and 40s, how is he going to be affected because of that? With 3 concussions in 1 year, 3 really bad concussions in 1 year. You know, it's something you got to talk about, and we'll have to wait and see. But that's the main storyline around the Miami Dolphins going into the offseason. As far as the Buffalo Bills, there's nothing really else to say. They're still the Buffalo Bills, though I will say I do think they looked down and played down to their competition in this game, because there was multiple chances for them to put this game away, and they didn't. It was a rout in the first quarter, and it looked like it was going to be the rout, and then the Bills let them come back in the game, and actually the Dolphins actually took the lead, I think, heading into halftime. No, it was a tied game. No, the Bills took the lead by 3 going to halftime. But, yeah, the Dolphins had the lead at one point in this game because the Bills took their foot off the gas and let them back in it. That is a problem. And Josh Allen throwing interceptions in just because he's chucking it deep to see if a guy's down there somewhere, that is a bit of a problem. And I don't know if that's kind of play is sustainable to win a Super Bowl, but I'm not going to hit the panic button yet until they make mistakes that's going to actually cost them one of these games. Now, it's not going to get easier for them. They play the Bengals this week, and if they win, they're going to be playing either the Chiefs or the Jaguars, which are in no way, shape, or form walk in the parks. And if they win that, they're going to go to the Super Bowl, where they're going to have to play either the Eagles, the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Niners, who are arguably the best team in football right now, the Giants, who have been on a roll as of late, and the Dallas Cowboys, who have the talent to win a game like that. So it's not going to, like, that game on Sunday is going to be the easiest game they play regardless of opponent. So it's not going to get easier for them. And if they make mistakes like they did against Miami, they are, against any of those teams I just said, they are going to lose. So that's only concern. It's not time to hit the panic button just yet until it actually costs them a game. So that's all I got to say about the Dolphins and the Bills. Next up was the Giants and the Minnesota Vikings. Again, a really fun game. We missed like the first 4 minutes of the game because the Bills and Dolphins game ran for so freaking long. I don't know why it ran for that long, but it did. But anyway, we missed the first portion of this game. But first of all, I want to talk about the team that won this game, the New York Giants. This Giants team, man, like, it's starting to feel a little bit like 2007 and 2011 a little bit, because this is a team that has come on late, has really great coaching, and they're a team that has made plays when they need to. Daniel Jones looked like a man possessed in this game against Minnesota, where he was attacking this deep. Now, granted, how much of that was Daniel Jones finally realizing his potential, and how much of this was the Vikings defense being putrid? And I think I would lean more towards the latter, but Daniel Jones still played out of his mind in this game. He was throwing the ball over the place. He was running the ball over this place. He was actually the team's leading rusher in this game. And that's saying a lot, because Saquon had a pretty decent day as well, both on the ground and in the air. So, and Saquon made some great plays in this game. You know, the offense, it's not the greatest offense in the world, but they made plays when they needed to. They moved the football when they needed to. The defense got after that Vikings offense. And, yeah, man, this team, look out. Because, like, I can absolutely, they play Philadelphia in Philadelphia for the 3rd time this year. And they play the Eagles for the 3rd time this year, not the 3rd time in Philadelphia. But I can absolutely see a world where the Giants upset the Philadelphia Eagles and one and done I can absolutely see a situation where they can do that. And because they're going to be playing against a team that Jalen Hurts is coming back, but he's been kind of injured a little bit. That shoulder is still kind of bothering him a bit. But this is a Giants team that's incredibly well coached, has been playing well, has enough good pieces has enough talented pieces where they can make big plays. And I can absolutely see this team pulling off an upset in Philadelphia. Now, as far as for the Vikings, I can't say I didn't see this coming because I picked the Giants to win this game. And it just felt like the Vikings' magic was going to run out and their luck in these one-score games was going to run dry at some point, and it did. And Justin Jefferson got locked down in this game. Kirk Cousins, that final play, everyone's been talking about it, that final play where he checked it down on a 4th and 8 to TJ Hockenson, that play, everyone's been saying it, but yes, it's true. That play perfectly encapsulates Kirk Cousins' career as a Minnesota Viking, if not his career in general, where it's being too conservative on a play where you're supposed to be aggressive and try and pick up the sticks. And you thought, though, that play is more frustrating, though, because this year you thought it was different because you saw that he was taking more chances and he was taking more shots down the field. And he thought Kevin O'Connell unlocked that a little bit finally. And yet his old ways came back and it bit this team in the ass. And they're now going home after being one and done. And they kind of backed into the playoffs. And this team has issues. For one, their defense. Their defense is horrendous. I think Ed Donatel is still the defensive coordinator here. And he still has not been fired. I don't know why. Because this defense has been putrid. And I don't know what else to say about the Minnesota Vikings. They have the talent offensively. They have, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson, but it's always something with the Vikings. They just can never seem to get over the hump, no matter the talent. And it's some with the Vikings where it's like they're kind of frustrating in a way. And at some point, it's like you got to capitalize on the talent you have because you look at the history of this Vikings franchise. Look at all the talent they have had throughout their history. Alan Page, Fran Tarkington, Randy Moss, Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Adrian Peterson. My God, like all the Justin Jefferson now, Adam Thielen, all this talent that this team has had in its franchise's history. And you don't have a single championship to show for it, at some point, and I even mentioned guys like John Randall, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, all the talent this team has had in its franchise history, not one championship to show for it. And at some point, it's like, what is it going to take? It's kind of the same thing with the Chargers, but in a way more tragic. It's like, what is it going to take for this team to finally get over the hump and win something? Because it always just feels like there's something holding them back, or there's some preventing them from finally getting over the hump and hoisting the Lombardi at the end of the season. And I don't know what you do. Honestly, unless you fire Ed Donatel, I don't know what you do to fix this team. You can get more talented on the defensive side of the ball for sure. You can get younger for sure. But if Ed Donatel is still the defensive coordinator there, nothing's really going to change on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. And Kirk Cousins, I really feel like what you see is what you get. And you saw it this year. You can encourage him to take more shots down the field, and you could scheme things up where he does take more shots down the field and he does get more aggressive. But you always know, you saw it this past week, where at some point his old tendencies of being conservative are just going to come back eventually. And it's going to keep this team from reaching its potential. And I don't know what you do with this team going forward. As sad as it sounds, that's what I feel like. Then the final game on Sunday was the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in a really good game. This is a really, really good game that came down to the wire, a game that the Ravens almost won had it not been for a miraculous punch-out 98-yard scoop and score by the Bengals on a drive where the Ravens are driving. Tyler Huntley got this team in a goal-to-go situation at the inch line, and Tyler Huntley took the QB sneak, tried to put the ball over the goal line, and right before it broke the plane, and no one's talking about this aspect. Everyone's talking about the Sam Hubbard picking it up and scoring. No one's talking about the great play by Logan Wilson, the awareness by Logan Wilson, the linebacker, to see the ball, punch it out, punch it out before it breaks the plane, and Sam Hubbard to have the energy and the gas to pick it up and score. And it just completely swung the game. And the Ravens came up short after a failed Hail Mary attempt that with an extra point would have sent the game to overtime. But I want to talk about the Bengals first because the Bengals survived. They play Buffalo this week. It's going to be a really great game. We're going to be here streaming it as well as the Cowboys-Niners game on Sunday. I'm really excited for that. But the Bengals, like I said, they're the Cincinnati Bengals. They're what we expect. I thought, though, the Bengals were going to dominate this game because I didn't know what their quarterback situation for the Ravens was going to be. I thought they were going to run through the Ravens, and that didn't happen. So that is a little concerning. But regardless, though, I think the game against Buffalo is going to be it's going to be a really fun game. I can't wait to see it. So nothing really much to say about the Bengals. What you see is what you get with the Bengals. It's pretty much exactly what you expect with them. They're as great as ever. They still are the elites of the league. But the main thing coming out of this game is the Baltimore Ravens. And when I say the main thing coming out, I am, of course, talking about Lamar Jackson. And I said it during the stream, and I still believe it. I think Lamar Jackson has, in fact, played his last game as a Baltimore Raven. Because, we saw all week where Ravens players and captains and teammates and people in the organization, coaches, John Harbaugh, all just talking nothing but positivity about Lamar, how he's a great teammate, he's a great leader, and Calais Campbell straight up saying that the organization should give him the contract extension and make him the franchise quarterback that he absolutely has deserved the right to be. But it just feels like the relationship is just meant to be over right now. And this all just could be just talk and nothing more, nothing to it. And they do come to a contract extension in the offseason, or they put him on the franchise tag, and all is well and dandy. But it really does feel like Lamar has played his last game as a Raven. And, it all comes down to him randomly putting out on Twitter his injury status and all that stuff. And it's like, usually the team would announce that, not the player themselves, especially not on their personal Twitter, but that's what happened. And you just get that feeling that Lamar is seeking greater pastures. Now it comes down to if he does choose to leave Baltimore, which it seems like he might, it's a matter of where he goes. What quarterback needy team is he going to go to? Is he going to go to a team like the Jets? Would he go to a team like the Miami Dolphins if Tua is not fit to play football ever again? Does he go to a team like, I don't know, like what quarterback needy team is there? Does he go to a team like Indianapolis? Does he go to a team like Houston, just to throw teams out there? Does he go to a team like New England if New England chooses to move on from Mac Jones? It's a matter of who does he go to and who's willing to pay him the bucks that he wants. Now, it's going to be really fascinating, and it's going to be interesting how it plays out. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on Lamar. And look, this all just could be nothing, and he signs a contract extension with Baltimore, and he's a Raven for life, and that's that. But it doesn't feel like it's going that way right now. And, again, we'll just have to wait and see. And now we're going to talk about the last game of Wildcard weekend. And that was the Dallas Cowboys taking on the least deserving team in postseason history to be in the postseason in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have not been quiet about my thoughts on this Bucs team. First of all, this game went exactly how I hoped it would. Even though I did pick the Bucs to win, I hoped it would have gone the way it actually did, and that was the Dallas Cowboys blowing out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and beating them 31 to 31 to what was it, 14? Yeah. Or 31-13. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, first of all, I'm going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys before I get into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. The Dallas Cowboys, first of all, for Dak Prescott, what a rebound. After a week of saying, like, oh, God, Dak's going to cost his team in the playoffs, he came back and played the game of his life. He went ape shit. He played bonkers. Was it 1 rushing touchdown along with 4 passing touchdowns? He played out of his mind in this game. Dalton Schultz played out of his mind in this game. The Cowboys' offense was firing on all cylinders. The defense was firing on all cylinders. And this was as dominating a Cowboys win as you can expect. And just seeing Jerry Jones in the press box, just like high-fiving everyone, like you'd have thought, like they were just high-five, like they were going batshit crazy in there, and they showed that every single time the Cowboys scored. And I don't know, we're gonna get the classic playoff match, but actually, I did want to harp on this because it's worth harping on. Brett Maher, bro, you better come back and make every single kick the rest of this postseason run, bro. Because 4 missed extra points. You were lucky they won this game in dominating fashion. Because otherwise, 4 missed extra points and you would have been cut on the fucking tarmac. So you should be thanking your lucky stars you're still here. And the Cowboys have publicly said they're going to stick with you for now. You should be thanking your lucky stars for that. So that's number 1. Number 2, this could be a really fun game next week against the 49ers that we will be streaming here on YouTube.com. That it's a classic playoff matchup, Cowboys, Niners, and they're between 2 really good teams. And that's the one thing I'm going to say about all the games in the divisional round. None of them, outside of maybe Chiefs, Jaguars, but even then, none of them feel like for sure wins for any of these teams. They all are games that I look at and I'm like, all right, I could see this going either way for sure. So it's going to be a really fun divisional round weekend. But in the sake of this game, it's also kind of like in that fold where the Niners are in a dominating role, but that defense for the Cowboys has been stellar all year. They were stellar on Monday night, and it's going to be a challenge for the Niners for sure. It's going to be a challenge for Brock Purdy. It's going to be a challenge for Dak going against that Niners defense. So it's going to be a really fun game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, a defensive battle for sure, but it's going to be really, really fun, and I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. So that's for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's just call a spade a spade. This was the worst playoff team in the modern era. For sure. And in my eyes, it's not even close. Because here's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of 2022 are the 4th team in league history to make the postseason with a losing record in the modern Super Bowl era. Those other 3 teams are the 2010 Seattle Seahawks, who made it at 7-9, the 2014 Carolina Panthers, who also made it at 7-9, and then the 2020 Washington football team, who I think actually made it in at 7-9 or 6-10, if I remember correctly. I think 7-9, but they are now team number 4. The Bucs are in that category. Here's the problem, though, as to why those 3 teams are different from the Bucs. 2 of those 3 teams, the Seahawks and the Panthers, actually managed to win a playoff game. In the case of the Seahawks, They beat the defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints in that game. That was obviously the famous Beastquake game. And then the Panthers beat the Cardinals in the first round and then went on to lose to the eventual NFC champion Seattle Seahawks. And then in the case of the Washington football team, they snuck into the playoffs, but they almost beat these very Bucs in the wild card round. They were this close to beating these very Bucs in the wild card round. The Bucs team that eventually went on to win the Super Bowl, and the Washington football team nearly beat them in the first round. So at least with all those teams, and even then, like that, so even though they didn't win a playoff game, they almost beat the eventual Super Bowl champions, and they had a really, really good defense that year. That front four that year was lethal for Washington. So all those teams, even though they made the playoffs with losing records, still had elements of them where they at least won a playoff game, or had elements of them where it's like, all right, they at least, I could see how they made the playoffs because this category of that team was so great. What did this Bucs team have? They had a 45-year-old quarterback who was clearly on the decline. They had inconsistent receiving weapons. They didn't have a running game whatsoever. They had a bad offensive line. They had a defense that was inconsistent as all hell. What the hell did this team have that warranted them getting into the playoffs? Let's just call a spade a spade. This Bucs team was horrible. They were a bad football team, and they were more than deserving of getting blown out in the first round, because this was a team that did not deserve anywhere near the postseason. So, yeah. Before I get into a full-blown rant on them, I have to talk about this because we are running long. I have to cut it short because I have to talk about this. And it's something that we're not looking forward to, but it's going to be dominating the headlines, I feel like, at least until we hear a decision. And that is, what is Tom Brady's future? I feel like it'd be not a real football podcast had I not talked about this following this game. And that is, what is Tom Brady's future here in Tampa? Or I shouldn't say that. What's his future in regards to football? Because we know if he does come back and play football, it's not going to be for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's for damn sure. You saw in his post-game press conference where it almost definitely felt like a goodbye, where he ended it with telling the reporters, thank you for welcoming me. That could mean one of two things. One, it could mean he's done as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Or two, he's done in the NFL entirely. And everyone's saying he's coming back next year to play. I feel like I'm alone in this boat where I say I can't envision a world where that happens, not after this year. And the reason is because you can definitely make the argument that he plays next year because his pride won't let him retire after the year he had. But I say that he's going to look at this year and say, man, I was not me. I can't, like, he's going to look back at this film of this year and say, damn, how did I miss that? I used to read that all the time. Or, damn, I can't believe I missed that throw. I used to hit that with ease. Like, he's going to look back, and you saw it. This was not the Tom Brady of the past 21 years. Like, this is not that Tom Brady where he was able to hit everything and read the field so great and see everything before it was happening. He wasn't like that this year. And he was throwing more interceptions than he usually would. He was turning the football over more than he usually did. He was missing throws more often. He was missing reads more often. And this was the first time in his, 22-year career where he finally started showing, 22, 23-year career, where he finally started showing his age. And even if he does feel like he can come back and play football again, what team's going to want that? And everyone's saying the Raiders, New England, Tampa will welcome him back. I first think the Tampa ship has sailed. But do you really think that teams would want a 46-year-old quarterback who has shown that he's clearly on the decline? I don't. I don't think so. Yeah, maybe if a team's desperate enough, I feel like the Raiders would be desperate enough, but would Raiders fans really want Tom Brady now? After seeing how he played in this year and how he played in that game, would they really want him? I don't know, man. Me personally, I think he came back just despite Adam Schefter, and it cost him a lot of things. One, it cost him his family, and because this caused the drama where it led to him getting divorced because he came out of retirement. And two, he resulted in having arguably the worst season of his career, not from a statistical standpoint, but just visually, because first of all, it's the first season in his career where he has a losing record as a starting quarterback with an 8-9 record. First losing record in his career as a starting quarterback. And all the things I mentioned earlier, he's missing throws. He's not reading the field like he used to. The offense that he's running is not the typical Tom Brady offense that we saw even in Tampa over the past couple of years he's been in Tampa. And it just looks like he's fallen off a little bit. And personally, I think he's going to look at that, knowing that the Fox deal is on the table, and he's going to say, you know what? I just can't do it anymore. I physically and all of a sudden now mentally am not able to do it anymore to the same level as I used to. And I remember, everyone saying, I remember just about a decade ago when Tom Brady was asked about when he thinks he's going to retire, and he said, I'll retire when I start sucking. And he doesn't suck per se, but he sucks to the expectations of Tom Brady. He has Tom Brady expectations level of sucking, essentially. And maybe that's what he thinks when he looks at it at the tape and he's like, you know what? I think it's time. I can't do it anymore. Physically or mentally, I don't think I can hang anymore. And I think that's what's going to happen. Everyone's saying he's going to play next year for sure. I don't think it's a for sure thing. I mean, retirement hasn't come up anywhere, but I don't think it's a sure thing that he's going to play in 2023. If he does, personally, I'll be shocked. But that's all I have to say on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization right now. And yeah, also Tampa, welcome back to hell. That's all I'm going to say. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the recap of Super Wildcard Weekend of the 2022 NFL Playoffs. Again, really fun weekend. This weekend should be even better with a divisional round. Once again, if you have not already and you'd like to, please go like and subscribe and share the video if you enjoy this content. And if you haven't already, go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod and go support me on Patreon if you like to at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. With that being said, I am Double Diesel. Peace.